Thank you very much for this nice introduction, Kerete. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real honor for me to be here, and I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizers, in particular, my dear Professor Tiziga, for this kind invitation. I am the president of this national committee, which is an independent scientific advisory committee set by the government, and in which pediatric and medical association as well as Ministry of Health are part of this. And our aim is to protect children from proven and well-documented emerging risks. Our approach is founded on the emerging scientific evidence and also on the precautionary principle. And our children are growing up in this digital era. There are many benefits to this. The challenge is for us how to help our children to be safe in this era, to get benefits but avoiding risks. And the thing is very complicated, I had to admit from the beginning. And if we want to address it holistically, we have to face the two sides of the same coin. The one side is the non-rational use of devices and applications by children. And the second one is the exposure to the emitted radiation from these devices. So we have to deal with both of them, and I try to through my presentation to elaborate to the extent possible, of course. So we are electromagnetic fields, we are electromagnetic persons, and we can receive external electromagnetic radiation simply because we have the right antennas in our body, and this is our DNA. So it's inevitable to have this interaction. And about the non-ionizing radiation we speak about, it has lower energy, cannot break bones, cannot ionize DNA, but we see that it can destroy DNA via other mechanisms. It can penetrate the body, and because it's unique in transforming information, in transferring information, it has a very modulated polarized waves. And these are of particular importance in relation to bioactivity, not the intents of the field. And I would say that it's a controversial issue, of course, and the risk assessment is very difficult to be done, simply because it is a multifactorial effect, depending on exposure, frequency, modulation, type of vulnerability, and the exposure is changing every day. Linearity between effects on brain by this radiation is not yet established, so we don't know what is the safe level of exposure. Potential interactions still missing. Wide passive exposure, we can't do a proper epidemiology study simply because we don't have an exposed population. So we have to rely more on animal studies, consequently. And of course, the most important is that we don't have studies which address specifically the sensitivity of our children. And so all this complexity inevitably leads to controversy, scientific controversy, and you have two schools of thought. One is claiming that only thermal effects are established, biological not yet fully established. And this is let us say, the line behind the legislation which is existing in the European Union, in USA, etc. And the second thought is that biological effects are well documented at much lower level than the existing limits. And the first official testimony that we do have biological effect is coming from ER, classifying radiation as possibly carcinogen class B. From that time till 2024, we have a lot of research showing that this level of risk has to be upgraded up to 2A or even 1. And of course, we have other studies claiming that there is no problem. And to my opinion, we need a proper re-evaluation by year. This would be the final status of this. But let us forget cancer per se. Here again, confirm that this could be a synergistic or a co-promoter for cancer, even if it's not cancer-causing per se, but it can act as promoter. And coming to the mythos in relation to DNA, the scientific truth is that this radiation can destroy the DNA not by ionizing, but via oxidative mechanism and the formation of free radicals. And it can also affect repairing mechanisms, DNA repairing mechanisms like melatonin, which is very essential to cope with the problems. And this is confirmed by 89% of peer-reviewed studies. Here we have a testimony from Swiss government expert report claiming that we have this oxidative effect on DNA. And from other reviews, we see that it is quite possible that we have a lot of implications. And you know, if we attack DNA, we have a lot of other oxidative stress, cause a lot of diseases and long-term ones. The scientific evidence is growing, is not yet absolute, I have to confess, but we have around between 2/3 and 79% of peer-reviewed studies confirming biological effects. And to see what lie in 2024 about neurological effects, the rate is 70% positive, 89 oxidative stress, genetic effects 70, reproduction and development studies 83. And also we have already plausible mechanisms for these effects. And one, the most prominent, is the activation of voltage-gated calcium channel signaling. So this is accepted by medical association worldwide. Example is California Medical Association, and I would like to stress your attention to the altered of brain development, to which I will focus most in my presentation. So potential biological effects important for our children is first of all and above all developmental neurotoxicity, which might express as neurophysiological effects and even neurodegenerational effect, because we have the problems with the DNA. Effects on brain chemistry, structure and function, cognition and behavioral problem, destruction of myelin, and potential increase of perfusion of the blood-brain, leading to this synergistic effect I mentioned before. Immune dysfunction, reproductive disorders, cancer, weakening of antioxidant repairing mechanism. And I would like to show this slide because it's very important. It's the silent pandemic that we face in Europe and USA. 1 to 6 children, they have behavior and developmental disorders. And this in numbers is millions of children. And of course, we know that a lot of neurotoxic chemicals around our children. But here we have another neurotoxic factor, which is the radiation, and for which we have a unique exposure every day, 24 hours a day. And this makes the risk, as you know, much higher. And this is a list of some short-term effects, which experienced by children, experienced by pediatricians. And I would say that if we experience such a things, of course, we have to address our pediatrician to ask what is the problem with my child. But pediatrician and the parent should also consider, are any sources of radiation in the house? Are the children using mobile phones for many hours, etc., etc.? And I will come later on this, how we should deal with this problem. And I said that I concentrate on the neurotoxicity because the brain of the children starts to develop within 4 weeks from conception. And by the age of 5 years, 90% of this brain has been materialized. And of course, we know that genetic factors determine the architecture, determines the mental legacy that each child brings with him. But actually, environmental factors are the ones, and especially the toxic ones, who can determine to which extent this legacy will be utilized and developed. And let us preserve this precious period of time for the children. And of course, the children are the most exposed and the most vulnerable than the adult. There are many reasons. I'm sure all of you are aware of them. I will just focus on three, which are particularly relevant to this radiation. First of all, we have higher embryonic stem cells. From the research, it was found that those are particularly affected by radiation, and they have very difficult to adapt to situations of continuous exposure. And then we go to epigenetic changes in the DNA caused by this radiation. These changes can affect, in particular, the development of the neurological development of a child. And the brain development is very sensitive to stimulus, which are caused by both the radiation and the screen and applications. The two sides of the coin goes together. And the problem is that we have a unique exposure, ambiguous, repeated, intermittent, and multiple. And this, as you know, for a toxic factor, is the determining factor. And if we consider that this starts even from embryo stage through the adolescence, I mean, I don't need to say anything else. And we have two scenarios of exposure. In the purple cycle, you see the passive exposure of a child and of a fetus, which can be avoided simply by implementing good practice. And then we have in the red circle, the active exposure of small infants and toddlers, to which we force, as parents, we force our kids to have this active exposure. And of course, I show also the baby monitor, which I have to stress your attention, because these baby monitors are very bad for the kids. They should be either wired connected, but in any case, it should not ever put in the beds of the kids, but at least 2 meters away. This is what I wanted to say. And here we have Wi-Fi, which cause both passive and active exposure. And the children have a greater internal exposure to radiation. The radiation penetrates deeper because of smaller and thinner skull, higher the electric constant, and greater conductivity. And in this picture, I think it speaks of these cells. You see here a small child of 5 years old compared to adult. We see how deeper radiation goes to the brain. And this is not only is proof from many studies, but I only refer to official testimony coming from ER, saying that we have up to twice in the brain tissues and up to 10-fold radiation in the marrow bone of the children. And you have new research which shows that the absorption in eyes is 5 times, and hippocampus, the most important, the more organ for cognitive development, 34 more. Here is a type of research done in Switzerland, a prospective cohort study, where they shows that cumulative exposure to cell phone radiation is associated with decreased memory performance, especially figural and spatial. No association was found in this study with wired media use. So if the kids are using wired connected computer, they are not exposed to they don't have these problems. And I come to Wi-Fi because it's a mythos, because of course it has lower energy than mobile data. It's better than this. But the exposure duration can be very long, and from some hours up to 24 hours with Wi-Fi, and it has those pulses which are very bioactive because simply it transfers information. And we have two nice reviews. I will stand on the last one for time reasons. It's a review of 100 studies published in Germany, where you see that Wi-Fi can cause all these functions, disorders, and affect almost every system of a man, and especially of a child. So in 2011, the Council of Europe give preference to wired internet connections and strictly regulate the use of mobile phones by school children at school. And this is accepted by many organizations and countries take measure, including Cyprus. And I'm proud that we have the Nicosia Declaration, which was signed by the Medical Association of Cyprus, our committee, and the Medical Association of Austria, where we say a lot about this radiation and the measures which we can implement. Now I switch to the use of tablets, use of all these applications by the children. And I have to say that this has never been tested appropriated of what they can cause to the brain of the children. And let us hear what American Pediatric Association says that before the age of 2, children continue to develop cognitive, language, and sociomotor and socio-emotional skills, which require exploring the contact with real world. Because of this immature symbolic memory, they experience the so-called video deficit. That means difficulty to transfer the knowledge from the 2-dimensional platform to a 3-dimensional real world. And warns about the using of media to calm child, because this would lead to problem with limit setting and ability of children to develop their own emotional regulation. And I have to say that emotional regulation, pediatricians know this, starts from the 30-year-old. It's in that age we should start to educate our small kids to develop culture in all the issues we discussed also before. I think is the most important period for them. And what is neurophysiologists said about this? That, of course, you know that the physical movements are the critical in the development of a child, and that this digital media cause overstimulation and potentially attack subsystems of the brain, which are responsible for the memory and cognitive performance. And smartphones in particular prevent thinking in the right way, which is the space and time. We can't do this with the mobile phones because they have quite different schedule. And the use of tablets for these small kids especially can attack the self-control development, which starts from 3, communication, self-regulation, and empathy. That's why you have a lot of bullying. One of the reasons, of course, there are many reasons, because the children cannot develop empathy and the ability to peer solving problems. And there is evidence that later in their life might have difficulties also in mathematics and science skills. And what is suggested is that children need digital-free zones for up at least well in elementary school to enable children to make the learning experience that suit to their development. Digital media may be introduced gradually. Pupils have to know both the potential benefits and their risk, and media maturity is the issue. It's a crucial element for media competence so that they may actively use digital media rather than being stressed and manipulated by them. Here is another study which shows that if you use this variety of screens in the age of 1 year, you face problem with communication in 2 years age, in 4 years age. I mean, all are pointing to the same point. And I have to remind you about the internet game disorder by WHO in 2018. And the alarming point is that a quite number of USA youth, as well Chinese youth, meet criteria for internet gaming disorder in recent publication. So in summing up, we see that emerging research is documenting impacts first from digital devices and application, which can cause this extremely sensory stimulation. And this stimulation can affect brain, chemistry, development, functioning, and can lead eventually to addiction and depression. And we have also the radiation, which causes, again, this overstimulation. It can destroy myelin. It can affect brain development and function. It is clear that we might have interaction and synergy. We don't know yet. We don't have research on that. And so the question is what we can do. We sit behind and waiting for the absolute proof? No. We must now reduce, eliminate as far as possible those two factors. By reduction the screen time of a child, eventually we reduce the radiation exposure. To eliminate and reduce the radiation exposure, we have to introduce in home wired internet. And when we give a device to a child, you have to put on flight mode, a small child, I mean. Keep distance from the devices, which is a very important factor. And to reduce the impact of devices, we have to have careful selection of application devices and keep time, content, and space rules and boundaries. Digital education must be in balance with classic one, and the child must use device when there is a real proof of educational benefit. This is a guide that we issue, and all this material is available on our website, and you can download. It's in both language, Greek and English. It's a guide that we issue for the parents during the pandemic because the children were exposed too much on the internet, so I wanted to help it. And coming to the issue that we discussed more or less before, we should focus on schools and homes because in this space, particularly in these two areas, children spend 60 to 90% of their time. And the reduction here is not depending on laws, which come late, but depends on parents' attitude and teacher attitudes. So also the American Pediatric Association advise that parents have a role to play here. They must utilize sound information, set limit to the time of screening, and minimize the exposure of the kids to radiation. And parents must empower the kids. I emphasize this, that it's very important to empower our kids to build self-regulation skills, develop media culture and maturity, and at the end, digital literacy. Science-based education and awareness-raised campaigns for parents and teachers is our prime activity in Cyprus. And we recently, I will show some of our material later. This is the Nicosia Declaration with 16 golden rules for protecting the children. Why? Not to use the devices, but how to protect them. And it is for us a non-changing goal that health remains their inalienable right and our obligation to defend it. This is a sort of material, videos, which all have also English subtitles. The one in the center is addressing the kindergartens in particular and has been approved by the Ministry of Education as a material. Here is also some of our guidance. This is how to use technology safely. And the role of doctors, I want to put a few suggestions for our dear pediatricians. They should ask parents about what and how they use the devices in the house and what is the policy in the house. They have to help families develop the family media use plan. educate parents about sensitive brain development, and promote safe technology and reduction of RF exposure in their own clinics. And of course, the only ones that can contribute to safer legislation, to push policies, to change policies and legislation. At the year of 23, this is the International Declaration on Human Rights in relation to children. And children have to be protected by intentional addictive devices and platforms, the right to be free from harmful exposure, and the right to be free from commercial exploitation, which happens. Closing remarks, we don't have yet all the answers and the absolute proof, but we have strong evidence on biological effects. The children vulnerability is undisputable. Exposure is growing exponentially. We have uncertain safety of technology. Legislation does not protect from biological effects. People are unaware or even addicted to this technology, and this has to be changed. Why? And we have guns to fight. I mean, there are a lot of good practices and alternatives which can reduce the risk from those applications. As public health scientists, we should not have dilemmas, but rather moral application. Our judgment of the weight of evidence and gaps must be complemented by public health fundamental principles and values for prevention. Set up in this country, I'm proud that I'm Greek, because we have prevention in our ancient Greece. For public health preventing action, sound scientific evidence of potential risk is the only thing that is needed. Scientific certainty must not be a prerequisite. We must support science-based precautionary actions by providing politicians and society concrete information distilled out of our best holistic and socially responsible science. We urgently need to develop and implement a risk governance. Our children is the most precious legacy that we have because, as Yannis Ritsos, our famous poet, says, the child is life, nothing else. Σας ευχαριστώ. Thank you very much for your attention.